This is unreal. I'm doing my best to stay collected. It's taken a lot more effort than I thought that it would. I've been watching over the past couple of days as a section of the internet has lost its collective mind over something that largely isn't even real. And I'm going to prove that to you guys. We have two studios, Larian Studios and Sandfall Entertainment, that up until just about 5 minutes ago were some of the most beloved studios in the industry, delivering two of the greatest games that we've seen in the past decade, that are now finding themselves being treated like they are enemies of the state. Not because of some bad release, no bad monetization or anything like that, no layoffs. No, it's because a couple of articles came out, misleading articles, that revealed that these studios have been using generative AI in their early concept phases. Early ideation, brainstorming, placeholder assets, things of that nature. Or in the case of Larian, they will be experimenting with it in limited capacity. That's it. That's all it took to set off the internet in one of the most unhinged reactions that I think that I have probably ever seen, where immediately nuance just vanished and went straight out the window, and projection just solidified into, well, their own truth. Generative AI has been one of the biggest hot button issues. It is incredibly emotionally charged. It makes a lot of sense why it is. It has its fingers in just about everything right now: art, labor, authorship, job security, infrastructure, the environment. It's just about everywhere. And it's a subject that I think a lot of people already walk into primed to be outraged. And when that outrage collides with very sloppy framing from games media and incomplete information, it really doesn't take a lot for this entire thing to just spin off the rails. And that's exactly what happened. So today, I want to talk about how that happened. I want to walk through all of that. I want to talk about how a misleading piece of journalism set off the fuse when it comes to this entire thing, how games media just kind of piled on instead of slowing down to make sure all that information was true, and why so much of this outrage feels a lot less organic and a lot more manufactured. Today's video is sponsored by Displate, and there's a lot to be excited about right now. They're about to release their official Expedition 33 designs, which are either live right now or should be live in the next couple of days, so definitely make sure to check those out. Displate has also been expanding their Path of Exile 2 collection, which I've already talked about, and yeah, I'm still struggling to be able to find wall space. These prints look so incredible in person. If you've never tried out Displate before, they make premium metal posters that mount magnetically, no tools, no wall damage. You just stick a magnet to the wall and then snap the poster on. Setup takes seconds, and swapping them out is just as easy. They've got over 1 million designs: games, anime, movies, tech, original art, and that also includes limited edition drops that don't get restocked. And if you want something more personal, you can even upload your own images and use their custom displate feature, perfect for gifts. Use code LEGENDARY at checkout, hit the link in the description, and check out what's new. Expedition 33 is on the way. The ground for this was already primed for drama long before AI ever even entered into the conversation. If you guys have been online, you've seen the resentment brewing around Expedition 33. In the days right after the Game Awards, there were a lot of people that were angry that their favorite games didn't win, so they started lashing out, calling it an Unreal Engine 5 asset flip, dismissing it as another white person game, and even accusing it of being backed by the IDF. What is wrong with these people? So when articles started dropping mentioning Larian's use of AI, it didn't really matter what was actually said. Blood was already in the water, and instead of slowing down, people just rushed in swinging. Now, much of this is being based off of a post from Kami where he had said Larian CEO confirms that the studio is using generative AI to explore ideas, flesh out PowerPoint presentations, develop concept art, and write placeholder text. He said that there won't be any AI-generated content in Divinity. Everything is human actors. We write everything ourselves. That set off a cascade of increasingly unhinged reactions, retweets claiming no good ideas could ever come from AI-generated art, people insisting that Larian's statements were just a smokescreen for quietly getting rid of their concept artists. Others then doubled down, falsely claiming that Larian isn't even hiring concept artists anymore, and that the majority of the fan base hates AI, so they just need to get rid of what they're doing. And then the game of telephone really kicks in. Suddenly, the claim isn't experimentation or placeholders anymore. Now Larian is supposedly generating all of their concept art with AI. Then it turns into they're just going to fire the employees who don't use it. Each step further from reality than the last, but said with that much more confidence every single time. Other games journalists then jumped in to keep the momentum going. Gene Park, for example, threw more fuel on the fire by dragging Sandfall into it, saying that the Expedition 33 team freely admitted to using AI after the game just won one of the biggest hauls in Game Awards history. And from there, the discourse just completely detaches from reality. We end up with some of the most aggressive virtue signaling imaginable, claims that Larian and Sandfall were engaging in technology that specifically harms black communities for reasons that were never clearly explained, but very confidently asserted anyway. Then we have the next logical escalation, and them being labeled fascist, with an alleged former employee coming forth claiming that Larian Studios employs outright fascists, going further to allege that they were assaulted at work and nobody did anything about it. An account, mind you, that was immediately deactivated after they made these claims. Now, I want to remind you guys, by the way, that all this is tracing back to a single tweet, a tweet that was sourcing itself from a Bloomberg article, with almost none of these subsequent claims being grounded in anything that was actually said. The specific allegation that was doing the most damage was that Larian is using generative AI to develop concept art. That's where most of this anger is coming from. That's the line that people latched onto. And the problem is, that's not what was said at all. Something that I only realized after I dug deeper myself, because I thought it was strange when Sven Vinka stepped in and angrily responded to the backlash himself directly, saying that, holy fuck guys, we are not pushing hard for or replacing concept artists with AI, with inflection on pushing hard. I then tracked that line back to its source and found the Bloomberg article written by everybody's favorite games journalist, Jason Schreier, where he had paraphrased an interview between the two of them with a line writing, under Vinka, Larian has been pushing hard on generative AI, although the CEO says that the technology has not led to big gains in efficiency. He says that there won't be any AI-generated content in Divinity. Everything is human actors. We are writing everything ourselves, but the creators often use AI tools to explore ideas, flesh out PowerPoint presentations, develop concept art, and write placeholder text. The use of generative AI has led to some pushback at Larian, but I think this is a point everyone at the company is more or less okay with the way we're using it, Vinka said. That phrasing Schreier is using gives a very specific impression, one that paints Sven as forcing AI onto the company, onto its workers, and into their games. Schreier gloated later on Blue Sky, saying that if he had known that this article would have been so controversial, he might have expanded it to include the full transcript, to which he then posts the full transcript, and I'm going to read it to you guys just to prove how bad faith this framing is and how ridiculous all of this is. Schreier starts with, speaking of efficiency, you spoke a bit about generative AI, and I know that's been a point of discussion on the team too. Do you feel like it can speed up production? Sven responds, in terms of generation, like whiteboxing, yes, there are things, but I'm not 100% sure you're actually seeing speed ups that much. You're trying more stuff, having tried stuff out. I don't actually think it accelerates things, because there's a lot of hype out there. I haven't seen, oh, this is really going to replace things. I haven't really seen that yet. I've seen where you get initially excited, oh, this could be cool, and then you say, in the end, it doesn't really do the thing. Everything is human actors. We're writing everything ourselves. There's no generated assets that you're going to see in the game. We're trying to use generated assets to accelerate whiteboxing, but I mean, to be fair, we're talking about basic things to help level designers. Schreier continues, what about concept art? Sven responds, so that's being used by concept artists. They use it the same way that they would use photos. We have like 30 concept artists at this point or something like that. So we bought a boutique concept art firm at the moment that everybody was reducing them because they were going to AI. In our case, it just went up. If there's one thing that artists keep asking for, it's more concept artists. But what they do is use it for exploration. Jason then says, the other thing that I've seen that being used for more and more is placeholders, stub dialogue. Sven responds, well, yes, so that depends on the scripter. In our case, what we do is whiteboxing, which means scripts put stub text in there. Some scripters will probably use ChatGPT, some will write it themselves. It's really up to them. Schreier then says, but you found that it's not actually speeding things up, it's just allowing for more experimentation. Sven responds, well, in a sense, it speeds things up because your experimentation is broader. But I mean, it's not as if the dialogues are suddenly being written faster. And on the contrary, it's not as if you're seeing the scripting going faster. What's happening is that there's just a lot more stuff being done. But I mean, if you've used ChatGPT, it helps you organize things, get you a faster Jason interrupts until it screws up. Sven responds, right. You always have to alter it yourself. And I mean, I'm a non-native English, so it's easier for me to make my phrases without mistakes, so it helps with that. Jason responds to write your company emails. Sven responds, no. I mean like putting it there to see, okay, this is a clean version of my text. So what's happening is I write with worse grammar now, and then I can use it to clean up my text, and then I have to go over it again and clean it up again. Schreier, that seems like it would take more time. Sven, yes, I know, but I have a feeling like my phrases are better. Schreier, your English is good. You don't really have to worry that much. Sven then goes on to say, I think experimentation, whiteboxing, some broader whiteboxing, lots and lots of applications and retargeting and cleaning and editing. These are things that just really take a lot of time. So that allows you to do more. So there's a lot of value in terms of the creative process itself. It helps you in doing things, but I haven't seen the acceleration. So I'm really curious to see, because there's a lot of studios that said this is going to accelerate. If you look at the state of the art of video games today, these are still in their infancy. Will they eventually be able to manage to do that at large scale? I don't know how much data centers they're going to need to be able to do it. Jason responds, it doesn't seem like it's causing more efficiency, so why use it? Sven responds, this is a tech-driven industry, so you try stuff. You can't afford to not try things, because if somebody else finds the golden egg and you're not using it, you're dead in this industry. Schreier responds, okay, but the downside is that it's so poisonous, controversial to players, to artists, to creative people in a way that other tech isn't. Maybe Photoshop used to be back in the day? Sven closes with, I think you'd find the same argument back in the days for a lot of things, right? Anything that has been automated has always been considered. I think that's part of the job, to make sure that you are competitive in state of the art. So if you don't look at the state of the art, you will eventually regret it. That's going to be even worse for the developers. These rat fuck journalists. I'm so beyond disgusted right now. None of this context was shared in the article or in any of the drama that we've seen online. And man, would this context have gone a really long way. Oh, man, if I would have known this article would have been so controversial, I would have actually shared the context of the conversation that I had and maybe have written the article the right way. How do you get out of anything that Sven said as Sven being hard on AI, pushing hard on AI, using it for concept art, getting rid of concept artists? The dude even says, and this is the part that disgusts me the most because it only comes out now. I'll be honest, I'm probably going to be the only person that's talking about this right now. They bought an art firm. They bought a concept art firm. He literally says, if there's one thing that my artist asks for, it's more artists. He goes out and gets it for him. They're using AI like it's a toy. Something to just get the juices flowing. Like they're looking at Google images or looking at things on Pinterest. He brings up whiteboxing, which makes it really difficult for people that are not in the games industry to fully understand. It's essentially like concept design. You're thinking about where object placement could go. They're basically just using random shapes to come up with an idea of what a level could look like well before the level itself is ever even designed. It's essentially the same thing that they're doing for their writing as well, for their conversations and dialogue. They're essentially just using ChatGPT for formatting. Man, they blew this thing wide open. And the entire time, Schreier is trying to bait this into the most, in the worst way possible. It's so poisonous. It's so terrible. It's so controversial. Everybody hates it. Why would you use it? Because if they don't use it, they could lose their company. Because they don't know if the technology is worth anything or not. They have to test it and try it and see if it works. He even says that he's not even sure if it's going to work himself. He said it multiple times. But somehow he's hard on AI right now. I can't believe that people actually let themselves get so worked up over something that's largely not even real. And all of this has just been perpetuated by artists and journalists on the internet because they're the ones that are the most at risk right now from, granted, the misuse of this technology, but also the proper use of it if you're not good at your job. This is not like Activision going out and selling microtransactions that are essentially just grok images. That's not the same thing at all. And I think that's indicative of the work from these companies. Look at Expedition 33. Look at Baldur's Gate 3. It's not like these games are suddenly the worst games in the entire industry now. These companies have not meaningfully changed in any way, except for the narrative that people are essentially projecting onto them. These companies that are making good games are not the enemy here. And I think that it's time for people to wake up to that. Just last weekend, both Larian Studios and Sandfall Entertainment were coming off of near universal praise at the Game Awards. Sandfall all but swept the entire show, with Expedition 33 landing as one of the best games this year. Larian, meanwhile, announced Divinity, the pseudo-sequel reboot of their original series, something that people have been begging for since Baldur's Gate 3 took over the industry. And that's not an exaggeration, by the way. Baldur's Gate 3 still isn't talked about in the past tense. More than 2 years after its release, it's still averaging over 60,000 concurrent players on Steam every single day and just crossed 20 million copies sold. That kind of staying power does not happen by accident. Both Expedition 33 and Baldur's Gate 3 have come to represent something that players have been missing. Games that feel like games again. No trend chasing, no monetization nonsense, just confident, well-made titles that put the craft first and remind people why we fell in love with video games. For a brief moment, all that goodwill was real, and then it just vanished almost overnight. The moment that this conversation shifted towards AI, the most volatile topic in this industry, both studios were treated like villains. That tone had flipped almost instantly. Praise turned to suspicion, admiration turned into accusation. After a full day of the internet spiraling, Sven Vinka finally returned to respond again, saying, "It's been a full week since we announced Divinity, our next RPG, and a lot has become lost in translation. Larian's DNA is agency. Everything we work towards is to the benefit of our teams, games, and players, a better workday and a better game. Our success has come from empowering people to work in their own way and bring the best out of their skills and crafts so that we can make the best RPGs we can possibly make." In that context, it would be irresponsible for us not to evaluate new technologies. However, our processes are always evolving, and where they are not inefficient or fail to align with who we are, we will make changes. To give you more insight, we will do an AMA featuring our different departments after the holiday break, in which you will get the opportunity to ask us questions you have about Divinity and our dev process directly. A measured response, transparent, open to scrutiny, and somehow that still isn't enough. You still had people that were responding with takes like, "Bro is taking a break, could have been an easy win just by going, you made yourselves clear, we overstepped, and we will ensure to not use infringement models in the future. Merry Christmas." But instead, a refusal to apologize and shifting blame onto us, Lamau. Why would Larian want to capitulate to this crowd? Why would they want to bend over backwards to appease people that project the worst intentions possible onto them at every single turn? All that would do is just signal allegiance to some of the most bad faith actors online, people who do not care about Larian, do not care about their games, and don't even care about reality. One, who is us, and where exactly are they trying to shift the blame onto the audience in that response? These are the last people that Larian should ever try to appease, because this is the kind of crowd that survives on endless purity tests, constant filtering, cannibalizing, and turning on itself. Bending to that pressure will not resolve anything. All it's going to do is just guarantee more of the same treatment down the road. The smarter thing they can do right now is ignore that noise, listen to the people that are actually playing your games, keep the dialogue open, and keep making games that people want to play. Sven is absolutely right in his response, giving your developers agency, the ability to choose, to experiment, to try new technologies, and then just drop it if it doesn't help. This is how good studios operate. And look, I fully understand why people are so concerned about AI. I've talked about it at length before, especially in the context of PC hardware, the whole crisis that's going on over there right now, how these companies are using the explosive growth of this technology to dissolve ownership, consolidate wealth, buy up land, and cause real damage to the job market. Those are valid concerns, but this conversation is almost always framed as a false binary, this or that, all or nothing, with no space left in between, and that ignores two very important realities. First, we genuinely do not know how far this technology will evolve or where it's going to plateau. And second, the worst outcomes that we're seeing right now are not coming from the tools themselves, but from reckless, profit-driven expansion being pushed by billionaires and corporations at the top. Now, at least from my perspective, and I understand that there are going to be some people that are going to disagree with me on this. That's the best part about being able to watch a YouTube video. You guys get to see some different perspectives on things. I think that this always comes down to intent and implementation, especially in the games industry. It's not about what a company is using, it's about why they are using it. If a AAA studio's only goal is just to make the same game they've always made, just cheaper and faster, if their sole focus is just increasing their revenue at any cost, that mindset is going to show up in the final product, and that final product will likely fail. We have already seen this play out. Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is probably going to be the clearest example that we've ever seen of this. AI tools were not used to make a better game or to improve the working conditions of their developers. They were used to rush a product to market and sell smoke to their players. The writing suffered, the content suffered, even things like the generated AI calling cards and cosmetics are going to become emblematic of how hollow of an experience that game is. And now it's likely going to be one of the worst selling Call of Duties of all time, with an 82% sales drop on Steam and a hole that Activision will likely not be able to climb out of. I mean, if we look at a lot of the criticisms that are being aimed at Expedition 33 right now, a lot of it's being centered on players discovering pre-generated asset holders, placement holders that weren't cleaned up before release. Things like flyers that were posted on the walls of Lumiere, scraps of old newspaper that were on the ground. And if you actually look at that game, you look at the world that Sandfall built, the story they told, the mechanical depth of that game, it's pretty obvious that those elements were not the point. And I know I'm being generous here, but even if some of that use was intentional, it didn't meaningfully impact the final product. Expedition 33 is still one of the most beloved games this year, which kind of proves the point that if the intention, talent, and implementation are in the right place, well, these tools can help artists realize their vision instead of undermining it. We talk a lot on this channel about the rise of AA and indie games, and we know how expensive and risky game development has become, and most of these developers take massive personal and financial risks just to even be able to get a game out the door, and most of these games fail. In 2025 alone, over 19,000 games released on Steam. My own Steam recap showed me that I had played 70 new games this year, which is a crazy number. Guys, I've been putting in some work, but that's not even 1% of the games that came out. A lot of that stuff is shovelware, sure, but there's also some great games that are buried in that pile that most people are never going to see. And as this market continues to get more competitive, as the bar continues to rise, the scope, polish, and ambition expected from a lot of these smaller teams is going to get borderline impossible without something there to be able to help them. Anything that can make them develop games faster, easier, or simply just make them more feasible to make, especially for teams that are trying to punch well above their weight and actually survive, they're going to need stuff like this. I still have plenty of concerns for AI. That hasn't changed. It probably never will. But I also see it as a tool that in the hands of talented developers with the right intentions, it's going to let these guys reach far beyond what they'd normally be capable of. And if that means that I get better games, cheaper games, and more of them, then yeah, I'm going to be there for it. If using AI lets these smaller teams compete with AAA or gives me more games like Expedition 33 or Larian's next project somehow tops Baldur's Gate 3, well, then I want to see what that's going to look like. I can't believe people would see Larian come forward saying, we're going to do an AMA. You're going to be able to talk to all of our departments, ask our artists or whoever else any questions you have about our process or what the next game is going to look like. And somehow people want to respond to that with, you're deflecting. How is that deflecting? It's so crazy how far people will reach for engagement on the internet today. It's just too much for me, man. Especially because I would almost guarantee that the vast majority of the people that have been complaining about this entire thing with Baldur's Gate 3 or Expedition 33 likely never even played those games to begin with. You already know that's the case. You already know that's the case. The thing that I want to make clear is when it comes to a lot of these AI tools, I think that sometimes people might misunderstand me when I talk about certain subjects. And I have no problem with AI as a tool. I have every problem with the way that a lot of these companies have been implementing those tools, how the rollout and the expansion of this side of the industry has gone, how much it's affected the economy, definitely, and how much more it's going to affect the economy in the future, as well as what it's doing to hardware and whatnot like that. But as a tool, I don't have any problem with it. If it empowers developers to be able to make better games, so be it. If it doesn't, let them decide that and let them be the ones to throw it away. I don't think that we need any of this moral crusading going on, trying to push these people away from this stuff if they feel like they're going to be able to find value in it to bring value to you. That's what my stance on it is. I feel the same way about a lot of different things. I mean, I feel the same thing about monetization in video games. I don't have a problem with microtransactions. I don't even have a problem with gacha games. All I care about is how you are using that income, how you are using those tools, that monetization, to be able to fuel a better product for the customer. Is it a fair exchange? If it's not, then we need to have that discussion, obviously. But if they're using these tools in the right way, if they're doing it to be able to try to bring us better games, then I'm all here for it. Aren't you? Cat just jumped down on the table. I just think it's crazy how fast this story got out of control. I think it's really damaging the way that some of these writers want to dogpile on the topic of AI. There's not a single one of these guys that are interested in covering this topic with anything other than bad faith. It's going to be very difficult for you to be able to find a writer that's talking about AI in a positive sense, or even trying to weigh the benefits between the benefits and the negatives of the use of this technology. In most cases, especially in games media, because these are the guys that are struggling with it the most right now, because they're likely the ones that are going to be replaced before any other writers, to be honest with you, especially when they're going out and they're not fully covering these topics the way they should or correcting the story when they should. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, like the video, subscribe to this channel. I would definitely share this video because I think this is really important context to make sure that other people know. There was a lot that was said here that was not said in any of the arguments against Larian Studios or even Sandfall, and it needs to be said. People need to know this information, and the fact that people don't know it is really upsetting to me because I love these companies' games, I love their intentions, and I have a very strong feeling that they are looking out for the rest of us. So I'm going to look out for them. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!